Good morning, everybody, and welcome to what is a wet track but a very sunny day here at the Rye House Kart Raceway for the 2025 edition of the London Cup, one of the premier events of the UK to end off the karting season on an eye, and we are so excited to get this year's underway. You join myself, Ross McIntyre, and alongside with the comment box, a man who should be very familiar to those of you who are local here to our house. There's the man, the myth, the legend, John Ratcliffe. How are we doing, John?
Wow, what an intro, Ross. Thank you very much. I was here yesterday soaking up all of the action. Of course, we've already been treated to all of the qualifying sessions and the first round of heats as well. But you join us here live today for the second round of heats and the finals. I think we thoroughly enjoyed 2024, didn't we? There were some crazy moments, particularly in those finals. I think we're going to see some more out there today, Ross.
Well, it's what we come to expect here at the London Cup. Well, expect the unexpected is the phrase that they all like to use. We are just waiting to get our first of our heats underway. I believe that'll be the first of the F100 heats that we have today. The Classic Kart Series joining us once again this season. Or this year, should I say. We are expecting an extra Honda Cadet heat today as well. From what I understand, there was a delay yesterday due to weather, ultimately that one of the Honda Cadet heats could not take place. So we are getting a little bit of extra action for you to enjoy at home. But apart from that, we are all set to run as slow and run as well as it can. So we'll just wait to see what's going. But of course, you are joining us live wherever you're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, and all of the above. We hope that you are enjoying all of the action so far. Not too far away until we get going. And of course, if you are trackside as well, hope you're not getting too wet at the moment.
Well, at the moment, it seems okay, doesn't it? There was a serious downpour yesterday, which is what caused the brief hold-up in the Honda Cadet. So they then got moved to the end of the day. But then by the time we got there, it was a little bit too dark. So we had to push it to this morning. But now that means that this weekend, Hondas haven't had any racing at all out there. Their only competitive session has been the qualifying session. So they'll have 3 squeezed into today, which is going to make it very exciting for them. Their qualifying was super exciting. So close. I mean, I say that about the Honda Cadets. It's pretty similar across a lot of the classes. Of course, with the juniors and the seniors this weekend split into 2 groups, not only for qualifying but also for the heats as well. And of course, then they'll have to qualify for the A and the B finals. So that adds a bit of extra scariness for the drivers. If you make one little mistake, something goes wrong, you have even a mechanical failure or something in one of the heats, that could throw you off for the final. You could have to try and fight your way through from the B final. Looks as though we got some karts out on circuit, though. It is, of course, our F100s heading out for their practice session. So the last of the practice sessions so far today. And then I think we'll be kicking off with the Honda Cadets and then back to the usual schedule for today. Well, you at least get 5 minutes of listening to these beautiful karts to kick off the morning action here from the 2025 London Cup. A good amount of drivers out in this one, but like I was telling you earlier, Ross, the heat yesterday for them was a little bit of who could make it to the finish would probably win.
That does tend to be the case with classic go-karts, to be fair. They are sometimes a little bit temperamental reliability-wise. Don't worry if you are tuning up. This is just the final warm-up of the morning before we get going. Only the 10 entries into this year's London Cup for the F100 guys as well. And a slight change from last year. We now have pre-2000 and pre-95 instead of pre-2000 and pre-1990. So some of the karts in general a little bit newer. Should ideally close everybody up a little bit. But again, you're just thinking mainly it is about just getting out there, keeping yourselves going, and for the engine to not conk out. But as I say, that looks like somebody's already come grinding to a halt at turn 2. The number 11 has come to a stop, and hopefully they're all okay. But kart does not look to be in the best shape, unfortunately.
Now, that's a shame already for Robin Perkis. Only had maybe 1 lap around the circuit. I mean, not one officially registered lap, to be honest. So I think he's made it out the pits around the first corner, and then it's already ground to a halt. So the brief bit of practice that he would have got this morning, sadly, will turn to nothing. But we hear these karts scream round for another couple of laps and some very tricky conditions. I mean, these conditions are tricky enough when you're in a brand new kart with all the gadgets and gizmos. They've got to try and bump start it themselves. Drivers getting out, and then for a couple it worked. For a couple they nearly lost the car in the process, but they did manage to grab it in the end. But even once you do get it bump started, that's taken you 10-15 seconds. By that time the whole pack has scampered off and you're basically just trying to consolidate the result to the finish.
Absolutely. It's one of those ones where if you are in a bit of contact, it's almost a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because even if you do get it started and you get it back again, you've lost that time. Even if it does keep going, you've still gone round and then you've got to muscle your way back through. And of course, these things, they're old, they're expensive, they break easily. So ideally, you just don't want to be getting into contact in the first place, I suppose. 2 minutes left in this warm-up session for these guys, though. And you mentioned those tricky conditions, John. I mean, it's especially hard in these older machinery where they don't have the technical marvels of modern go-karts. And the power delivery is so aggressive with the old carb style as well, where you're going to be choking the engine coming down the straights. It's tricky in dry conditions wearing these things. It's even trickier in the wets as well. And there are some parts of the racetrack that are still very, very damp as well. Again, you mentioned that heavy downpour yesterday, raining overnight as well. So even though the sun is shining, it's not too chilly here at Rye House at the moment. Lots of standing water still around on the track, especially on the outskirts of places like Stadium Bend, like Complex Nivelle. So those are things that drivers need to be wary about. I was already seeing a couple of people ploughing straight on at the infield hairpin earlier on, just trying to test where the grip is, giving it a little bit too much, and then nearly ended up in the grass, nearly ended up in the wall. So the warm-ups, not just to get yourself ready, it's also to test the conditions, but they're going to be so different by the time you get back out on track.
Exactly that. Yeah, of course, the practice sessions, like you say, not only trying to find a bit of time, but also testing where that grip is and where that grip very much isn't. If you're going to go for a spin, the best time to do it is in the practice sessions before we get into racing. Now, I did say earlier about the F100, so the fact of basically keep your kart running for the full 7 minutes plus one lap and you're potentially going to win the race. I say that. It was actually a really exciting first heat yesterday. We had Liam Hamling, who was your pre-95 champion at the London Cup last year. He's moved to pre-2K for 2025 here this year, and he went from pretty much the back of the grid all the way through to the front. He was chasing down Rob Halls all the way through onto the final lap, and they ended up finishing 0.081 difference. Hamling couldn't quite grab him. He was right on the rear bumper, nipping at his heels into the final corner, just not quite able to force a move and find a way through. So Rob Halls took the win in that first one overall, and pre-95 winner was Craig Cutler down in 4th place. But it looks as though time about ticking to zero. Then we just wait for the checkered flag to come out on the gantry. As I say that, as if by magic, it does indeed come out. So drivers will be heading back to pit lane, and we'll be soon enough getting ready for the first race of the weekend. I can see up on the gantry Josh East getting all the professional photography. He's got a great vantage point up there. It's a good place to be for Josh. But sadly, a couple of karts not making it to the end of this session. Hopefully, all the Honda Cadets that we see out next do make it to the end. And a little check down into the dummy grid. Does look as though we've got our schedule about right, Ross. So Honda Cadets up next then.
Yes, and just a reminder, this is heat number 1 for the Honda Cadets. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have all of our heats ones yesterday, and then there was a downpour, and then it got too dark. So unfortunately, we had to delay our cadets for a little bit later on. But it just means we have an extra race coming your way today. And, it's Honda Cadet racing. It's always really, really exciting because it's just so close out there. Might have a little bit of a delay because I can see that somebody's just come grinding to a halt at the final corner. I think they dropped the kart and spam, but they are going to bump start it and try and get back to the pit lane. So hopefully it won't be too long of a delay. But they haven't actually made it to the checkered flag yet. But they are now going again, which is good to see. That was the number 102 that we just saw going, well, 107, should I say, of Richard Plummer on his way around. But yeah, time to get ready then for our first heat of the day, and that is heat number 1 in the Honda Cadets. And as I said, we're expecting very, very close racing in this one, not just because it's Honda Cadets, not just because it's the London Cup, but all of the action we've seen so far this weekend been really, really exciting. Tricky conditions for these young drivers, yes, but it also means it maybe allows a few people you wouldn't expect to be up the top and fighting there a chance to get in and show what they can do.
I felt so bad for the Honda Cadet drivers yesterday. Of course, no fault of their own, and equally no fault of the guys here at Rye House, just with those tricky conditions showing themselves. I felt awful for them because, of course, you get in that mindset for the race. I mean, they got all the way out to the grid yesterday and were sitting there before it then got abandoned, and they were sent back. And of course, you get yourself built up, that adrenaline starts to flow, and you're getting ready to race, and it doesn't happen. Then they were put to the end of the schedule for tomorrow. And then again, waited for it, got all ready to go, and then it didn't happen. So again, that peaks and flows of adrenaline and whatnot, it's a difficult one to deal with, particularly when you're such a young kart racer. So drivers have had to now go to bed, relax, recuperate a little bit, and come back today. But they're going to have a lot of races in today's schedule to sink their teeth into. So for Honda Cadets, it's all coming down to this today, really, which is going to be awesome. We'll run you through the grid in a few seconds. I want to say hello to some people in the live chat. Thank you all for joining us on the live stream here today. And of course, if you're listening on the tannoy around the circuit, you can find the YouTube live stream. I think easiest way is just to search 2025 Rye House London Cup and you should find it. If not, head over to the Rye House YouTube channel and you will find it there. But a lot of support for lots of different drivers. Good luck to Ethan Lloyd. Let's go Chase. Good luck to Rio Panayutu. Lots of love for Chase in the chat from multiple different people. Go Taylor Bellini. Good luck Jonah. And everyone just saying hello and enjoying the action from today. Someone has said, why does the commentator keep cutting out? I think we have just sorting a couple of issues up here and just making sure we've got screens and whatnot. I think you were jiggling with some of the cables in the back. I think we hopefully got it sorted now, but let us know in the live chat. Either way, we're getting ready for the first heat of the day in Honda Cadets, and it looks as though drivers just about getting themselves sorted and ready for this one. And we'll quickly run you through the grid then before they head out. Now, Shaylin Srikansan, what a fantastic late lap from Shaylin in qualifying yesterday. It was Luke McGall's session for 99% of it, but not the 1% that mattered. Shaylin grabbing a cheeky quick lap at the end, stealing pole position away from Luke McGall. Now, when I was chatting yesterday, of course, that qualifying was in the dry, so I was mentioning about the fact that Luke might have been better even to start in third place, because often that outside line is a tricky one into Stadium Bend. You can often get forced out and just get absolutely freight trained down the inside, but now it's a little bit slippery. Maybe that outside line might actually be more of a beneficiary to Luke McGall.
To be quite frankly, what I think is going to happen is we're going to get down to turn one for the first time, turning wheels and anger in the Honda Cadets this weekend, and everyone's going to turn to the right and everyone's going to go straight on quite a lot. I think it's just the nature of it. It's still early doors. They've only had a quick warm-up session and that's it. You know, no racing yesterday for these cadets, so they're going to have to go out there, get used to the grip very, very quickly on their sighting lap, and then just basically turn in and see what happens. You'd think that the ideal line would probably be the inside, yes, but again, as you said, the tricky conditions, maybe the outside working a little bit better in the wet, but then again, if you go slightly wide, start running off the road, then you're going to encounter even more issues. So it's very much a game of chance, I think, down into turn one. But if you can keep it on the black stuff, keep yourself straight, and just stay in a good position, by the time you get to the infield hairpin, moving on to the second half of the lap, if you're up there in the top 10, in the top 5, I think you leave yourself in a very, very good position to have a very strong result at the end of this opening heat, and then looking forward to the rest of the day as well. So everyone's sat in the karts ready to go. It would seem just looks like we're getting a final few checks out on the circuit, and then we will be getting ready for heat number 1 in the Honda Cadets. Drivers all in karts. We've got parents, marshals, mechanics, the likes all down there on the dummy grid with them. And hopefully won't be too long until we get going once again. Maybe a few, I can see a few drivers definitely starting to get a little bit impatient now. Someone's got the visor up, gesturing at one of the marshals in the pit lane going, why aren't we going yet? These guys just want to get racing here.
Oh, for sure, of course. They've had to wait an extra night to get some racing action under their belt, so they'll be wanting to go nice and speedily. Yes, to answer your question in the live chat, this is indeed the Heat 1 that didn't take place yesterday. So if you're not able to make it down here for Rye House and you were supporting a driver in Honda Cadet, you've actually been benefited a little bit because you haven't missed any of their racing. That's going to start in a couple of minutes' time, and we look forward to kicking off the Sunday's action here from Rye House. Now, I think I'm interested to see as well, with, as you were mentioning, there's a lot of standing water there around the circuit, but there are bits beginning to dry. Now, I'm interested to see whether we do get a bit more precipitation here in Hoddesdon, or whether it will continue to dry and dry out, thus creating a bit of a dry line. And when will that crossover period be from those wets to the dries? Because that, if that happens in the finals, that's going to make it really interesting of what drivers and team members decide to do in terms of when to change over to the slicks, whether the gamble is worth it or not. Now, for the initial attempt at this race yesterday for the Heat 1 in the Honda Cadets, there were 2 drivers out of the whole field that had gone for wet tyres. All of the rest of the field was still on the dries. As the rain started to come down, it then got held up a little bit, and then they got onto the grid, and then it was really pelting down, and it was a case of those 2 drivers had made a fantastic call themselves, or the team members had made a great call. Sadly for them, it came to nothing, because of course the race was pushed back, but it just shows one little call like that can really make or break your weekend.
It's one of those things where you've just got to go with your gut, really, when it's those changeable conditions and you think you might be able to try the slicks, so you think it's worth giving it a go on the wet. Typically, rule of thumb is that if you're gambling on slicks, if you can make them work, if you can generate enough heat, enough energy in that rubber, slicks is the way to go. They will be the quicker tyre, but it's a very, very fine line. And it is very, very difficult to make them work in the first place because the track is still a little bit wet and because you're trying to work that heat into the tyres, which means you've got to be pumping the brakes just that little bit harder into the corners, which in the wet you don't particularly be wanting to do. I've seen many a kart race in my time where somebody starts on the slicks in changeable conditions and then goes backwards because they're just not able to generate that temperature onto the surface, into the carcass of the tyre. But for the time being anyway, it is definitely going to be all wets out there for every single one of our drivers coming into this one. So it'll be a wet race, a wet afternoon for the first part, or a wet morning and presumably a wet start to the afternoon as well, as we're still just having a few moments to wait here before we get our Heat 1 for the Honda Cadets underway. But coming into this one, John, you already said you've got our eyes on a couple of drivers out there. Any predictions maybe for who you think is going to be quick across the day, or is the only prediction just it's going to be a lot of fun?
Definitely that last one, mate. I can't possibly give any sort of names because I know I'll just end up commentators cursing them, and then they'll rue me for the rest of the day and they will despise me. So I'm not going to say any particular names, but there's plenty